From Bitcoin, blockchain or distributed ledger technology to cryptocurrencies, tokens and initial coin offerings, it seems everyone involved has something to say, but can you really trust their advice? One man's had enough of weasel words and charlatans and is ready to give you impartial, independent analysis. With digestible blockchain bites, ICO analysis and need-to-know news on cryptocurrencies, author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate and award-winning software innovator Barry James brings you Radio ICO.
It's Barry James for ICO Radio again and Blockchain Bites, and ahead of this evening's masterclass, Blockchain Masterclass, one of the speakers is Jody Cleworth, who welcome Jody.
Hi, Barry, thanks for having me.
It's okay. Would you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about this evening, about the company, and about what the exciting project that you're doing around blockchain and logistics, I think?
Yeah, that's correct. So MTI was basically created to innovate or rather digitize the supply chain process from end to end. And my background is primarily in the container shipping industry, having worked for Maersk Line and Kuehne + Nagel for around 16 odd years. So MTI is the combination of my experience and then my partner John O'Langley's abilities to basically program anything. He's got an aviation background, so what more better than to have a blockchain programmer that can actually program blockchain for aeroplanes.
Yep.
So pretty secure and integral technologist. We've been playing with the technology for about 20 months now. We are blockchain agnostic, so we've been using very different forms of technology. You can take us back to almost 20 months ago where we burned some messages on the Bitcoin blockchain, understanding what trust, transparency, mutability and time date stamp could mean for the shipping industry, or something that is very well needed. And we've accelerated that learning process into integrating with various different ERP systems within the container logistics industry. We've got a major project at the moment on with the Port of Rotterdam and Block Lab, where it's almost got a Brexit focus, so frictionless trade, how do we automate supply chains from the European hinterland into the UK in a pre- and post-Brexit environment. Regardless of the political situation, we've still got immense cost savings that we can develop. And I think it's all come to a very understanding of what we can actually do with the technology and the application of what an ICO can do for MTI's business. Inherently, you focus on the operational data or the cost savings within the maritime space. That's a buy-in for any large organization to look at new technologies. But when you look at the application of blockchain or distributed ledger technology, what we're doing now is actually gaining data from the peripheries of the industry. So whilst they're probably interested in seeing those exports happen, they don't really have much of a buy-in. But ultimately, with the ability to deploy or use a token within the supply chain, we can start focusing on incentivization mechanisms, data sharing. So where these important milestones in our industry are currently paper-based, we can intersect them through data on a blockchain and then make payments instantaneously through the form of a token. So it's all been very well thought out. It's a logical conclusion for us to be working in this space of ICOs, and particularly very interested to do this from London, where we think it's a kind of new frontier, so to speak.
So yeah, it's really interesting that you've used the phrase blockchain agnostic,
Yeah.
and here you are doing a blockchain project and running an ICO. So that's for very good reasons, isn't it? What are those reasons?
Well, what will the next 5 years look like? What is big business going to engage with? What is big business not going to want to see? What type of technologies can we actually afford to share data on? So those questions are, very easily to answer in the short term. But what's the medium to long term actually going to look like? And which technologies ultimately is going to be the winner is, still under question, and probably a long way off from where we are now. now, particularly when you throw in the discussion of quantum computing. But ultimately, we'll use what works for the industry, and inherently we've got all the tools now to put together a very good platform and network which can actually enable the frictionless trade that we're talking about today.
But presumably, having taken the approach that you have done, that's because you're using this technology, whether it's, one blockchain, another, or a tangle, or whatever it is, because it can deliver things or it can do things that you just can't do, or certainly not practically, using just digital, as it were.
Correct, yeah. So the phrase I like using there is repurposing the workflow process on a blockchain, and those workflow processes inherently look completely different to what we know them within the industry today, or particularly within the logistics industry. But ultimately, through the releasing of data from different data silos, combining those data streams together and automating them through smart contracts, we inevitably unlock a whole bunch of cost saving and new business models and revenue streams that we've never done before. But we weren't simply able to do that without formulating the basis of trust. And our initial application was quite simple, but formulated the how can we trust a weight of a container, and we used the technology to pinpoint a basically democratized IoT device that we've got scattered all around the UK, which is a weighbridge, which is certified, calibrated and attested. Plug that with a stream of data from the ERP system and automate that into the industry networks through the use of blockchain by creating that provenance of data all the way back to that device. And that really was one of our milestones or watershed moments in our industry, to actually prove what can be done. How do we apply new supply chain finance applications on that trusted data? How do we automate the onward processes from that load point of where containers and cargo meet? We've never had that visibility in our lives before, but I think if we boil down this entire conversation, in any ICO, in my opinion, it's really about the business model and incentivization mechanisms of why people are going to share data amongst each other. And we've done very well in figuring out how we can do that practically and technologically in terms of the use of blockchain at MTI.
So it's a lot about sharing data. So and running across organisations, and obviously. Is that on a private blockchain or is it on a shared blockchain? How does that work for you?
Yeah.
And you've probably looked at all these options, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've got a few different options that we've using. We've managed to even do some pretty good business deals and making sure we stay abreast of these guys' technologies as they progress. But ultimately, when it comes to the maritime industry, we aren't going to see a massive use of public blockchains. It's going to be private. It's going to be enterprise grade. We've got to keep these transactions at a very low cost. When you look at some of the public blockchains out there, it's a non-starter in terms of the cost of sharing data on these different technologies. But the real key that MTI actually undertook in our first application was the ability to intersect these different technologies and release data from various disparate systems. So what we'll see is a polyglot of different technologies intersecting probably over a private blockchain, though we can still take use of the benefits of tokenization within those networks, create that trusted operational data and intersect it with a tokenized element of it where we can run financial operations therefore.
Yeah, I gather that we're about to start with the masterclass. Final question.
Yep.
Just tell us finally just a little bit about the ICO and about where we might find you.
Yep. So the ICO is being run by Turek, based here from London. Find me on LinkedIn and our website, marinetransportint.com. And I'm happy to have any collaborators that really want to get involved with what we're doing. We're actually conforming a consortium group of startup companies from the Netherlands and the UK. So we're happy to proliferate the technology for any interested parties.
Great. Okay. So blazing a trail, marinetransport.int.com. Thank you, Jody. So it's Barry James again for ICO Radio, the Blockchain Bytes programme. And I'm looking forward also this evening to hearing from Lucie Munier, who's with me right now, and has a really interesting story to tell, both about her company and the ICO that they've recently run. So, welcome, Lucie. Would you tell us a little bit about the company to start with?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Barry. So the company is called Qadre. It was formed in the summer as the result of two previous companies forming. One of the companies had built their own blockchain. They started building it 4 years ago. So it started to build their own platform. And then the other company was running blockchain consultancy and used to have to stress test different blockchain platforms to see which ones would be the best for their clients who want to adopt blockchain in their business model. Yeah. And what they found that each time that this one particular company won out amongst all the others. So it just seemed logical at the time to then merge. So now we offer, a full range of services from the actual platform that we've built ourselves all the way to consultancy, whether a company needs blockchain, developing a proof of concept and a pilot, and getting it out into the world.
Oh wow, that's fantastic! And subsequently, you've raised some money via not an ICO, in fact, but what we should call a token generation event. Would you explain to listeners what the difference between those two things are and what you've done?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've recently raised a small fund of 70 million.
How much?
70 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In a UK-run, what we call exactly a TGE, a token generating event. I think a token generating event differs from an ICO in many ways, that in the fact that it's taken, the way of funding and the good idea that ICOs had, but takes it a step further. So we fully KYC'd, AML'd all of our investors, did a lot of research into where the cryptocurrencies that they were investing came from to make sure it wasn't from any, dodgy means. Yeah. So, we kind of wanted to envisage if the regulators in this jurisdiction would want to interact with this form of raising, how would they want to do it? So we had very, very stringent processes in place, and we've actually spoken to some people since who looked at our KYC standards and our anti-money laundering standards and said it was actually a lot higher standards than what's currently used in a lot of the big banks in London. Yeah. We've always wanted to, work as wide as white and try and get away from a lot of the bad press that ICOs have had recently. Yeah,
not all of it deserved, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of money to raise. What's it for? What was the plan? And what are you going to do with it? And are they the same things, by the way?
Unfortunately, I can't really discuss that at the moment, yeah.
But in terms of, so is that because in the token generation event it was a sort of closed event, wasn't open to the public, or?
So we initially had a pre-sale, which was more of a closed event, and then we did open it out to the public. But yeah, we found that, so we're developing our blockchain platform in a consortium of various different companies. And we're scaling rapidly, so the funds were kind of needed in order to aid that scaling.
And what were people buying into in that open sale? What was the offering to them?
So it's use of the platform. So we're going to be open sourcing this platform called Plug in the coming next few weeks, definitely, maybe sooner rather than later. And what companies and people who buy into this token generating event can do is use the tokens on the platform to build the applications that they want to build.
Okay, so it sounds to me there's a kind of big vision behind there somewhere about the utility, the usefulness, and the innovation around this. How do you see the future?
Well, I think as a company, we definitely see the future that there won't be, one blockchain to rule them all. We won't see one platform. We'll see various platforms that are fit for various different purposes. But what will become increasingly important is to be able to communicate between these platforms and to be able to have system integrations in place. So that was one of the models when we were developing Plug, was the interoperability between different systems, and that's exactly what Plug does. It can interact with different blockchains and different systems in order to keep up with the updating of standards and to keep up with what industry requires.
Oh, kind of like a backbone.
Yeah, like a backbone or an internet of blockchains, as we could call it.
Okay, so do you see blockchain becoming, spreading through? I mean, it's certainly going to be used in fintech, the financial sector, and so on. Do you see it moving into other areas?
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely think it will be very useful where various parties don't trust each other. We're already seeing massive uses of it in supply chain. So it will 100% affect different areas, but I think the level to which people will notice those effects will be quite minimal. I think a core to a good software is that you don't notice that it's there. So I think people who believe that blockchain is going to completely revolutionize the way we do things and completely disrupt lots of different industries is maybe slightly overhyped, and could be creating false expectations of what the technology can deliver. It will certainly be used in many different use cases where it is needed, but there are so many places that a more traditional database would be much better suited than a blockchain.
So you're seeing it being used mostly under the hood, as it were?
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of, kind of listeners and their interest in, the future of this, what should we be looking out for?
I think, well, firstly, we're going to see the whole area move away from cryptocurrencies. I think it's very important that people would differentiate between cryptocurrencies and the underlying platform, the underlying technology. And I think, as I said, people can look out for blockchain's widespread use within different business models and between different industries, and also just being able to interoperate. We already see a need to interoperate between different systems and different platforms. So that will be a really interesting thing to look out for.
And if people want to come and find you and maybe ask some questions, where would they find you?
So we're London-based. We're based in Chancery Lane. So I can give my email if people are interested.
Please give your email if you'd like to, and maybe a web address.
A web address. Oh yeah. So it's www.qad.re. And if anyone wants to contact me directly, it's lucie@qad.re.
So thank you for spending some time to talk about what you're doing. Looking forward to hearing more this evening, and undoubtedly it sounds like there's a lot more to come.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Barry.
Thanks a lot.
ICO Radio was brought to you by author, speaker, transparency and clarity advocate, and award-winning software innovator Barry James. Get in touch with the programme, put yourself or someone else forward as a guest. Visit iconewsdesk.com. And if you've enjoyed the show, please leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe to get your next insights and interviews from the ICO Radio podcast.